Hi everyone, welcome to this session on EU funding. We heard a lot about companies and research centers during this first day asking money. So now we decided to bring on stage people having money, which is very important. So we will have 3 speakers coming from the European Commission and 4 speakers coming from the EIT manufacturing. I will present them later. But just being a bit provocative here to launch the session, I'm used to say that normally 10 years ago, it was a bit complicated to get funding for battery or energy storage. Today, if you are not able to secure at least 10 million next year with EU funding, it's because you missed something. So the pressure is on you, not on the Commission anymore, because they did a lot of work to make it happen. So let's start directly with the first presentation. I would like to welcome on stage Johan Blondel. I don't have to present him, but still I will do it. Johan has been in the driving seat for the creation of the Battery European Partnership, and he will present now how the Battery European Partnership and Horizon Europe are driving innovation for batteries. Please, Johan.
Thank you very much, Thomas, and good morning to all. So, I would like to give a very brief overview of the funding opportunities for batteries and battery-related activities under the European Commission means. And I would like to underline that what I'm going to present is by no means going to be extensive. I am just going to give you some pointers, some indicators, but like Thomas said, the burden is on you to go to the participant portal and look for the right keywords in order to find the opportunities. But let me help you along. So, there we are. The main instrument that we use for the funding of the batteries is the partnership that has been set up actually only 1 year ago, even though the preparatory work started 3 years ago. We chose to go for a partnership because this provides stability for the sector. It allows every actor in the sector to plan ahead and to align their activities to the common goal of this partnership. Now, this partnership really is the biggest effort that Europe has done so far in terms of funding batteries. So before we had some scattered activities. Since 2019, we brought everything together under one header, but it's only now under Horizon Europe that there is clear, transparent partnership, and that has a budget of 925 million euros of funding by the Commission, which is to be matched by the members of BEPA, where the moderator is representing, and Wouter Ezermans is the director. And together, this brings a very strong move forwards in terms of the battery research. Now, this partnership is implemented through annual calls. And I will talk a little bit more about these annual calls, but the most important thing to note is that these calls are open. So you do not need to be a member of BEPA to be part of it and to respond to the calls for proposal. So what is the scope of the partnership? Well, that is graphically represented on this slide. We cover the entire value chain of the batteries, starting from raw materials, though not the mining aspect, that is covered elsewhere, but the processing of the raw materials, then the synthesis of the advanced materials, the incorporation into the cells, then the assembly of the cells into modules and battery packs. And then once we go into the actual applications of the battery systems, we work together with other partnerships and initiatives, because they are the ones that are going to handle the integration and the implementation of these batteries. However, the responsibility comes back to the partnership at the end of the life. So then we look at either second life applications or the recycling of the batteries, and then feeding the secondary raw materials back into the production cycle. Now, all of the activities of the partnership are taking place along the lines of a strategic research and innovation agenda that is represented graphically here. This SRIA, another acronym, has been drawn up and agreed between the Commission services and BIPA, and it really puts forward KPIs and timelines, so intermediate milestones for all of the realizations that the partnership is targeting. So you see on the top line the different areas that form a mapping of the circular diagram that I showed before. But below that, we also have the cross-cutting areas. We have safety, sustainability, and then the coordination aspect of the entire partnership that are also managed, of course, in this strategic research and innovation agenda. What is also worth pointing out is that due to the new structure of Batteries Europe, the ETIP, we are now merging together the activities of Batteries Europe and BIPA, and working together to create a joint roadmap, a joint strategic and research and innovation agenda. And we expect the update to become available in January of next year. Because this is a highly dynamic market, we need to continuously update our targets to ensure that we are aligned with what is happening in the world. Now, I mentioned that this strategic research and innovation agenda is implemented through annual calls. These are the results of the first call. And just to give you a bit of an impression of the amount of appetite that really exists. So we had 7 topics published for a totally foreseen budget of 160 million. But the amount of submissions, the proposals that we got, largely bypassed what was available. So we got a total of 61 proposals coming in for a cumulative request of 430 million. And then that is the task of the team of independent experts to select the top, the best proposals for funding. So this resulted in 22 projects being selected for 155 million funding. So this is the first slice of this 925 million that was implemented in the call of 2021. The call of 2022 just closed. I mean, the closing date was last week. And just to give you a little bit of a sneak preview, the appetite has increased even more. We had 10 topics for a total budget of 133 million. What we got is a whopping 93 proposals for 487 million euros requested. So the evaluation process is going to start really now in the coming weeks, and we expect towards the end of the year to have a good overview of the ranking list of this call. But you see clearly something is happening, there is a lot of interest, and even though we have a lot of means, it still isn't enough to cater for everyone. Which is why, thankfully, there are other lines of funding also under Horizon Europe, but using other instruments of the EU as well, that can come in to complement this non-significant budget already. So, just looking at complementary funding, feeding into the batteries activities of the partnership, the first line that you see there is battery research. And the top line that you see is the European Research Council, which provides funding more at the level of individual researchers or small teams. And this can also be used to fund doctorate, so PhD, and postdoc research. What is not mentioned there, and it actually goes hand in hand with it, is the Marie Curie program that you probably know. And that does a similar thing. So it also provides funding at a PhD and postdoc level. Then we have the European Innovation Council. I'm not going to dwell on that because my colleague Francesco is going to give a dedicated presentation on that. But This whole partnership is under what we call Cluster 5 of Horizon Europe. There is also a Cluster 4 that is more aiming at industrialization. And you see inside that cluster, there are also some hooks that can be used to feed into the battery research aspects. So we've spoken a lot about raw materials yesterday and even this morning, and it is very important to note that we have the European Raw Materials Alliance. There is also an EIP on raw materials that is a stakeholder platform. And the raw materials work program is a separate line or a separate header in the Horizon Europe work program, but certainly something to keep an eye on, especially when you're looking at mining aspects for raw materials. Also under this cluster 4, you have advanced materials, so synthesis methods and scaling up of the advanced materials. Then there is also manufacturing and automation, and we will hear a little bit more about that because the final, I think, presentation is going to be by EIT Manufacturing. So they are the ones overseeing this process. Then there is also artificial intelligence and robotics. So this feeds into the Big Map initiative that we spoke about yesterday, and key digital technologies. This is now called the CHIPS partnership. So it has been revamped. And even though it is, of course, not totally dedicated to batteries, it offers possibilities. For instance, dedicated electronics for battery management systems, communication, sensors, that kind of aspects can be embedded in that work program. Now, these are aspects more feeding into batteries. We also have the use of the batteries, where there are a number of potential funding areas. So I already mentioned earlier that the partnership, BAT4U, is really looking at the battery system up to, the battery system level, but then the integration is handled by other partnerships. And you see a number of these partnerships mentioned here. So the biggest partner is 2.0 because they handle the zero-emission road transport, but we also have very intense dialogues with Europe's rail, waterborne transport, who are more and more electrifying as well, and even clean aviation in very initial stages, but there also something is clearly happening. Those cover the transport applications of batteries. Of course, we also have stationary applications of the batteries. And the energy work program provides projects that use batteries. So the focus there is not on the development of the batteries, but rather the incorporation of batteries into larger systems and foreseeing, for instance, grid interfaces. So another vector that you can take into account. This is more or less complemented by the Clean Energy Transition Partnership, but that is a little bit more complex because the bulk of the budget there comes from the member states and the regions. So you cannot really consider it as a purely European funding instrument. But again, there are possibilities there to use batteries to help in this clean energy transition. The Innovation Fund, I'm not going to talk about that. My colleague Evelina is going to address that. I just want to point out that there is also the Horizon Results Booster. This is not pure funding. It is a service that is provided by the Commission to help projects look for further dissemination and commercialization of their results. So you see there are different stages there. First is the establishment of a portfolio, establishing also links between similar projects to help them come together jointly, and then supporting also an exploitation, dissemination strategy, drawing up a business plan, and then the final step, really actually going to the market and foreseeing the funding that is required for that. So there is this service, and I would like to point out that, of course, the European Battery Alliance also has this role to help bring developments closer to the market and support you with funding, for instance, through the European Investment Bank. Then in italics, because they are a little bit marginal, I also want to point out the European Defence Fund. There are niche applications for very specific types of batteries there. No guarantee, so you will need to keep an eye on their work program, but there are options there. And then finally, the mission on cities, so that's the full name, the climate neutral and smart cities, where, again, there are possibilities for using particularly stationary batteries to help these 100 cities become carbon neutral by 2050. So, again, this is really a bird's eye view. I hope I haven't overloaded you too much after this coffee break, but we'll be here to answer more questions. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Johan. Thanks for the presentation. So as you can see, it's a small warm-up, because then we will have other funding opportunities, but you can see that you have a lot, and Johan is so used to EU funding and so on that he already did the transition to the next speaker. But before moving to the next speaker, I would like to remind people online, because we are here physically in Brussels, but we have people online listening to us in Europe. Do not hesitate to raise questions. After Evelina, we will have a short Q&A session. But then I would like to welcome on stage Evelina Daniel from DG Klima, and she will present the Innovation Fund, which is an amazing new opportunities for the battery community. Please, Evelina.
Thank you very much. Good morning. I will put a minuter on my speech to make sure not to eat into my successor's time. So yes, good morning. It's a big pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Maybe a few words about myself. Until last year, I was working on modeling for the DG Energy, so working on the long-term targets, 2030, 2050, you name it. And then from this very macro level, I come to Innovation Fund, which is dealing with specific projects. So I benefit in a way from this macro view to the very specific view on the projects. And already from my past macro perspective, I can see that batteries are tremendously important. We simply cannot do without them for the transition to climate neutrality. Okay, I start the presentation. No, sorry, this was this one. Yes, so Innovation Fund. I could speak for a very, very long time just about the way this tool is constructed, but maybe what is the most important today, it is financed from the emission trading system, part of it. So when we hear the calls about capping the price on the emission trading system or that it is a burden, we should also remember that part of the revenue from the emission trading system goes into the Innovation Fund, which in turn can finance clean tech technologies, which are very much needed indeed for 2030 and for the climate transition, climate neutrality transition. Where we really want to focus with the Innovation Fund is especially on technologies that today are not yet at the commercialization stage, which haven't been yet demonstrated at the large scale, because those technologies are so much needed indeed for the transition towards 2050. We have the areas of eligibility, which in a way you can see as those sectors which fall under emission trading system, they also benefit under the Innovation Fund. So you have, of course, energy-intensive industries listed in the Annex 1 to the emission trading directive. Then, of course, we have renewables and storage, because power is covered by emission trading. We also have carbon capture, use and storage, which is a solution for be it power, be it industry. I must say these are classic four sectors. And as the time goes, we develop our interpretation of those sectors, and we put it up front that also scaling up of clean tech is eligible. What is meant by that? It is manufacturing. So if it is manufacturing of the components for renewable energy equipment or manufacturing of components for storage, projects in those fields, which are innovative, of course, will be also eligible. What is also important about the Innovation Fund in general, that this is funding not for research, and maybe actually I can go already to my next slide, yes. So this is not the pure research, not anymore. For that we have other tools that Johan explained so well. Where Innovation Fund comes, it is large-scale demonstration, commercialization, first-of-a-kind plant. You could express it in TRLs, technology readiness levels, but we know that there are always subtleties and different interpretations, so please put the numbering from my presentation only as take it only as illustration. But if you were to make a sort of progress from the research at the lab scale up to the projects developing already well-established technologies, we sit a little bit in the middle. By the way, there is also, in addition to Innovation Fund, there is also a Modernization Fund, which is only for the countries depending on their level of income, so not all the countries, and which is managed differently, but also financed from the emission trading system. So yes, very, very specific focus, but yet very broad sectoral eligibility for the Innovation Fund. And then if we were to go further towards more developed, better established technologies, we have Connecting Europe facility, we have InvestEU, of course, with the lending. And here I would just mention that, again, with Innovation Fund, we are a young program, we are still developing. So to go a little bit beyond our current operation from last year, we also try new schemes, which is blending the finance. So blending Innovation Fund with InvestEU program of the European Investment Bank. Without going much into technicalities, it is providing guarantees for the lending for the specific areas. So for so-called more risky projects in the more innovative technologies, so very much aligned with our DNA, but yet different way of doing things, different having partner, EIB as partner. And within this cooperation, we also have the program with the Catalyst, Breakthrough Energy Catalyst from Bill Gates Foundation, where we would have lending from the EIB based on the guarantees from the Innovation Fund and the co-financing from the Breakthrough Energy. Importantly there, call of proposal recently closed, but it will, applications are still possible. Batteries are one of the 4 areas selected, so very, very specific focus on batteries. Now, my slide is already on the lessons learned, but let's pick up from the eligible areas. So yes, storage, intraday and long-term for mobility and stationary purposes has always been eligible for Innovation Fund. Innovation Fund operates since 2019, very young program, I always have to stress it. And we saw a number of very good applications in the process from the storage. We also saw those which were about manufacturing, hence now upfront this interpretation that manufacturing of new technologies is eligible. What I need to stress is also that it is very, very competitive program. So putting burden entirely on participants, I'm not so sure. If we sometimes regret very much that we have so many good proposals, but we cannot finance them all simply because budget is limited. But calls happen now regularly, and we do increase our budgets. I will explain that later. So what we saw so far from the applications received, we had a number of so-called small-scale successful projects, because Innovation Fund operates in the small-scale calls and large-scale calls. The division between the two is the capex of the project, 7.5 million. cutoff line. And then, of course, grants size is according to the scale of the projects. Under the large-scale projects, we speak about grants of average 50, 80 million euros, so very, very large grants. Under small-scale projects, they will be much, much smaller. So we saw a high success rate of energy storage projects in the small-scale call. There were wonderful projects on the foil for batteries, on the stocking second life batteries at the car manufacturing facility, a lot on recycling of batteries, vehicle-to-grid communication. Where it was a bit lacking, it was in the large-scale call in the past, which changed now. Fortunately, we are very happy. We always strive for the both geographical and sectoral balance. Now it got redressed in the second large-scale call with the projects which were indeed on manufacturing of components for batteries. This map that you see on slide, these are the results of the second call for large-scale projects. Yeah, probably very, very small to see, but the icon on the storage, manufacturing of components for energy storage, in France and in Poland, we have two large projects which were selected for grants. Right now, I think they must be closing their grant negotiation of the grant agreement. So the project in France, Relieve, is about recycling. The project in Poland is about manufacturing components for lithium-ion batteries, both very large scale, both game changers in the field. Of course, also very happy about redressing geographical balance with the Polish project. And these are two among 17 selected, so there is something to be proud of. Like I said, already in eligibility, different parts of value chain can be supported. And let's not forget that sometimes batteries, they form part of the project, even though we would not put it under specifically this technology. Typically, there could be a project about manufacturing green hydrogen. Well, you know all the requirements which are now expected of the green hydrogen. So in order to do it with only renewable electricity, with all the requirements, there would be also battery as a feature. So not only there would be a dedicated park of the renewables, but also a battery that would ensure the storage so that really nothing has to be bought from the grid. I'm just giving this example, but there were also storage for the transport application. So yes, you will not find them as storage projects, but still we do have them. All this information is fully public on Innovation Fund website, which was quoted, I believe, on my first slide. Now, new things. We are a very competitive process with excellent quality of applications and a number which largely is much larger than budget available. Considering that carbon prices increase, we have higher budget, and therefore, as announced in the Repower plan in May, we could increase Innovation Fund budget. So for the next, it will be the third large-scale call, we will have the budget of 3 billion plus even 20% flexibility reserve. Sorry, this is this is very commission nitty-gritty, but still it tells you exact size of the budget. And one thing is having bigger budget, and in a way, consequence of that, and additional willingness to focus on the key priority areas among all our eligible sectors are the topics. So for the first time, in November, when we will publish the third call, we will have the topics. One will be on electrification and hydrogen applications in industry, one on the clean tech manufacturing, and here we explicitly will mention the storage, as part of the clean tech, and also mid-sized pilot projects. This is a bit novelty for us, where we will seek synergies, I was pointing to Johan, seeking synergies with the research program, so projects which already demonstrated, maybe at a small scale, but would like to demonstrate at a large scale. They would be our target under this topic. They wouldn't be yet asked to commercialize. and therefore their business plan would look a bit different than what we saw so far. But yet they always been eligible, and we would have a dedicated budget for them, dedicated topic. And importantly, within topic, there is peer-to-peer evaluation. No longer big CCS, carbon storage, carbon capture and storage project would be competing with a pilot on the, say, battery manufacturing. So this is the big novelty. This will be the call of November. We will have info days that I already encourage you to participate, because then we really explain the evaluation process, different stages. The results will be of course next year. Importantly, in the Innovation Fund, we have quite well established knowledge sharing activities, partly among the winners of the grant, but partly also open to the on different levels, of course, matching the sensitivity of the information to the general public. So I think that there will be interesting lessons to be learned from there. So this will be in November, right immediately when we publish the call. If I remember correctly, November is more or less the time when we could expect the information on the project selected for Catalyst. So end of the month is going to be rich in interesting information. So I would very much encourage you to participate in the events, have a look at the projects which were awarded. All of this information is publicly available. We also have excellent publications on the best practice. Our application process, of course, is very competitive. Hence, any chance to maximize opportunities by looking at the best practice so far is, I guess, welcome, and all of this information is available publicly. Thank you very much for your attention. Happy for any questions.
So maybe let's bring back Johan and Evelina on stage. Evelina, if you could stay with us here. So after this very interesting presentation from both of you, maybe it's time to open the floor to the audience for some question, because you might have some interrogation.
Hello, it's me, Mushur Nasir from Clarence. I would like to ask about the criteria. Innovation Fund, as it is evident from the name that innovation is the key characteristic. And then another criteria is maturity. So how to create this balance between innovation and at the same time maturity? If something is innovative, it's not supposed to be that mature. So how to create this right balance and how to establish maturity with the innovation? This is my question.
Thank you very much for the question, spot on. Indeed, Innovation Fund has 5 award criteria. Just to be complete, in addition to the 2 that you mentioned, there is also scalability, greenhouse gases avoidance, and also cost efficiency. Now, the 2 that you mentioned, degree of innovation and project maturity, are the most difficult. Exactly for the reasons you specify. So, in order to be simply evaluated, project needs to demonstrate that it is going beyond the state of the art currently available. So this is the justification. Normally it is something that applicant would know on the basis of the research. So Innovation Fund is not for the Me Too project, so to say, deployment of existing already concepts successful elsewhere. No, it is for the first of a time, maybe second of a time. So this has to be justified, and in order to have efficient process, in a way, if this cannot be demonstrated, the project is not even evaluated any further. We have so-called cascade approach. So yes, big difficulty, but we target innovation. This is our DNA. I don't think that we would be changing that anytime soon. Now, how does it rhyme with the project maturity? You're absolutely right. If I'm innovative, I will be only looking to assemble the investors, to get the backing. Banks will consider me as a risky project. But we do see that there are projects which can pull it. There are projects which, well, maybe they will not have very high internal rate of the return, but still they have investors backing them. Everything is in line for project to be financially viable, even though it will not create profits immediately, but it will be stable. It can survive, of course, with the Innovation Fund grant also coming into play. So, in fact, we have, as a part of application, there are financial models to be filled in to show that project is standing. It can survive in the years of the operation. We also have feedback from applicants. It's difficult to make this justification. Sometimes external help is needed. Not always chief accountant working on the project will have finance background, will be very finance savvy, hence external help is needed. We do have this feedback, but it is possible to square, and in a way that helps us to make sure that these projects happen. Let me just say last word, we do have experience of predecessor of Innovation Fund program, so-called NER 300 program. Plenty of very good projects selected, which never happened because they were not solid enough financially to happen. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other question from the audience? If not, maybe we will take the question from the chat. Someone is asking which funding are available for startup spin-off, because we see very often startups trying to develop themselves, but they are a bit lost in this environment. I'm quite sure Francesco later on will have some answer to that, but what would you answer from your side, Johan, and maybe then Evelina?
Well, indeed, as you mentioned, Francesco is going to provide a little bit more input in the following speech. What I already indicated in my presentation is not so much the funding, but more the support towards startups. So this results booster mechanism is a very important tool. It is really rapidly growing in terms of interest, in terms of numbers of projects that have been supported in order to come to the market. So I would see that as a more general mechanism or instrument that is available. And then specifically for the battery sector, I would look at my colleagues here from the European Battery Alliance, who can provide additional support together with industrial backing and the backing of the European Investment Bank as well.
I would just add to this that, okay, first of all, if startup applies to Innovation Fund, no problem. We don't have specific criterion that you have to be established company for the last 20 years. Now, it will be, of course, difficult, especially to show well the project maturity. And then I would just mention that as a part of Innovation Fund, we also have project development assistance, which is available for the projects which performed very well in the evaluation. They passed all the minimum thresholds, but simply there was not sufficient funding for them. So if they performed well on project maturity, but not yet perfect, they will be directed to the project development assistance. And then, indeed, this is delivered by European Investment Bank, so finance specialists there, and helping to prepare the proper pitch of the project financially, looking for the investors, checking the soundness of technology. So I think it is a very interesting opportunity. And by the way, from the predecessor of Innovation Fund, from NER 300, we have actually the PDA program, which is open to everybody. You can find it via links I was providing on the Innovation Fund website or via European Investment Bank. So we have a PDA program open till the end of next year, precisely on this. In the areas eligible of the NER 300 predecessor, so slightly bit narrower than Innovation Fund, but we saw that beneficiary of such programs, indeed, later they are better prepared, and I think it would much apply to startups. Thank you.
Maybe a small addition, if I may. Not for the pure startups that are not yet on the market, but for those that are just established. Of course, the IPCI mechanism would also be applicable there. But then, like I pointed out, this is not EU funding. It is national funding that is being provided, but under the approval of the European Commission. But it is also an option to take into account, and for that you should turn to your national government.
Thanks. And it's true that Francesco later on will probably present many things interesting for startup, but if you have the opportunity to attend the last session of the day, Tore here on the front row will also present, I believe, the business investment platform from InnoEnergy that can also be an interesting tool. I think we have a question here.
Is it open? Okay. My name is Yiğit. I'm from Aselsan, Turkey. First of all, thank you for presentations. And sorry if I missed, if you have already mentioned that. Like Horizon Europe project, is it some kind of associate countries, non-European Union country, can also apply the innovation fund, like Turkey?
Eligibility is the EU countries and the countries which have European emission trading system, so also Norway and Iceland. I think that if part of activities would be in Turkey, this could still be checked, depends how much actually CapEx happens where. So if it is purely projects in Turkey, everything happens in Turkey, no, it won't be eligible. Rules are different from one program to the other, but for Innovation Fund, it's really strictly linked to the operation of the emission trading system.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other question? Yes, here.
Yannick Moche from Erinklinger. Just have a question, like, what are the mechanisms that are in place to ensure that the funding is not in vain? Like that what is being developed maybe by the companies which receive the funding is actually a product that will be used at the end of the day, because as I mentioned today, there might be that there's the development phase, and at the end, yeah, the customers or the potential customers go towards a cheaper product from another region. And also, do you have also, I would say, some mechanism to ensure that also those projects know what the others are doing, so that there's some kind of collaboration between the projects or the companies? So that would be my 2 points of the question.
It's a very good point, and our hope and intention is really that the partnership is going to play a key role in all of this. So because we have this multi-annual strategic research and innovation agenda, the intention is really to work with building blocks so that we have successful projects, and that in subsequent calls we actually put in a clause saying that any new applicant needs to either interface or take stock of what has been produced by successful projects. So this is certainly one mechanism that that is going to be applied. Apart from that, we also look into the new structure of the Batteries Europe together with BEPA under the partnership BAT4U to really harvest successful projects and to then encourage them to further look into exploitation and take up. So one of the roles that we foresee for Batteries Europe is to be like an observatory, not just taking stock of what is happening inside the EU projects, but also what is happening at a global scale. And this functionality will also play a role in supporting successful projects.
From the Innovation Fund, well, first guarantee that the grants are not going for nothing is the monitoring of, indeed, greenhouse gases emissions avoidance. So should the project not deliver at least 75% of what was promised, the grant has to be returned. That's strict. Although not to scare potential applicants entirely, the part which is disbursed up to entry into operation, which is often associated with capex, of course, investment. So up to 40%, this is given. This will not be taken away, because we consider that, of course, there is a technical risk, and applicants come for the Commission to help with this technical risk. So 40% is given, secured, but the rest verified on the GHG avoidance. On knowledge sharing, on the very similar lines as Jochen outlined, it's also very dear to our hearts. We are a young program, so we are still a bit experimenting with that. I hope that at the Info Days we'll be able to announce some more. But we do want that everything which is, of course, not commercially sensitive is available for the learning purpose, that other applicants, other projects, and of course academia also can learn from that. Thank you.
One last question from the audience? No? If not, I have one last question for you. Johan, you mentioned that Horizon Europe, you can have project TRL 3 to 7, let's say. Evelina is mentioning that TRL 7, 8, 9, very close to the market for the Innovation Fund. Do you envisage any way of collaboration between Horizon Europe project that will end and to support them to reach the Innovation Fund? Do you envisage any collaboration between the two programs? It's maybe a bit tricky as a question, but probably some people have this in mind.
Well, I think we can certainly talk about that, and as Evelina already indicated, there are going to be more synergies on this mid-size projects, if I quote it correctly. So yes, I would see this gradually picking up speed as we progress. Yep.
Absolutely, the same willingness on our side. We are very keen on synergies because public resources are very scarce. It would be almost a pity that a very good project, brilliant on research, collapses later on the commercialization stage. Okay, it doesn't have to be financed by Innovation Fund only, there are other sources, but still it would be sort of a failure. I can say that we already saw projects which went through the research from the Horizon 2020 funding, and we discovered them then in the Innovation Fund. So this is what we are striving for. We have some ideas about maybe already asking in some specific research topics, already thinking about next steps in the projects, for the projects going towards commercialization. Maybe some methodologies could be closer. So once you calculate GHG savings for research, you don't have to do it again according to the different rules for the Innovation Fund. So yes, quite some thoughts around it, and we will be working on this. Thank you.
Maybe a very short addition. In the relevant topics for the calls 23 and 24, there is a clause that is going to ask the proposals to look for further exploitation possibilities, including the Innovation Fund. So that is going to be built into the call, and it has to be provided in the proposal as well, just in order to ensure this continuity.
Okay, thanks, Johan. Thanks, Evelina. A last round of applause for the two speakers. Thanks a lot for your time today. And to continue this session, let's continue with a new funding as well. The Commission presented this at the very beginning as a place where unicorns are born. So let's see now with Francesco Matteucci if we will have in the coming years battery unicorn at the EU level. Please, Francesco. 15.
Okay, that's good. Okay, good morning to everybody. Thank you. I've never been named so many times as today, so I hope I will respect all the things you are waiting for me. Okay, 30 seconds of introduction of the keywords I will say. I will try to stick to the point that EIC, it's a brand new boy. I try to repeat that we are a startup with approximately 1.5 billion euro to manage each year. It's public money, so the responsibility is really high. And we are positioned in the Pillar 3, Innovative Europe, with the colleagues of EIT and all the KICs. And we fund along all the value, we speak about a lot in these days of value chain. We fund all the value chain of innovation. That means from, as Evelina was saying before, from very low TRL, really from ideas, that's the Pathfinder ones, that ends when you reach a proof of principle or proof of concept, so the approximate TRL 3-4. Then we fund through the transition, the movement from the lab to the prototype, so from the proof of principle to the prototype, working in relevant environmental conditions, so from approximately TRL 3-4 to 5-6. And then the last one is the accelerator that has been backed up by the SME instrument. Okay, that's a framework where we work, and there are two main issues that has to be said. The first two calls, Pathfinder and Transition, they are open to partnerships, to all the kind of EU partners. The third one, that is Accelerator, is only mono-beneficiary, and it's for small, medium enterprises, not only startups, but small, medium enterprises, okay? Let me point out one keyword, that is deep tech. That means we fund only deep tech projects. What does it mean, deep tech? It does not exist a scientific definition nowadays of deep tech, but let me say that it has something to be linked to the science content of your project or of your company, and we fund the high risk, high return of investment projects. Let me say that this morning, I come from an experience in different fields. I've been a start-upper, I bankrupted companies, I work as a corporate R&D, I work as a scientist. I did too many things, though I know nothing in details, but I worked in different fields and different way of working with the mentality of exploiting research results. In my 22 years experience, I can repeat what a friend of mine that is a very successful scientific entrepreneur, is one of the few in Italy that's backed up his company up to the NASDAQ, always says, it's not a problem of getting money. It's a problem of using this money for a good idea. As Evelina said, we have seen with NER, with NER, I don't know the pronunciation, we gave a lot of public money from your taxes, from my taxes, to many projects. The problem is to make it happen. It's a really, really hard job. Because in Europe, I don't know why, but we continuously repeat the European paradox. It's true. We look at the numbers. We are the best, we have the best scientists worldwide. No issue about this. But when we have to make money out of research, we are not the best ones, for sure, looking at the numbers. You can use different kind of impacts, but believe me, what I'm saying, I can demonstrate it. I mean, here there is a friend, Professor Martins, we discussed a lot in the last year how to make this mentality in the young scientists happen. And the only way is training. I believe that once again, if we look at deep tech is continuously training and learning. I like to call the DBTL approach that is design, build, test, and learn. We have to change our mentality. I don't know where it comes from, but in my country, in Italy, when you bankrupt, you are something like to go to jail. If we look in US, it doesn't work like this. And if we look at the backup of all the big guys, like Elon Musk or whatever it is, believe me, they have got more bankruptcy than successes, okay? When you go to look for private money, they want to see the team, not the great Nobel Prizes. They are not interested. They want to make money. That's rude, abrupt, but if we want to change the mentality, EIC, we are here for this. We are here trying to be the guy that will fund a lot of know-how, but always with one aim. We want the people, the applicants, the proponents, the beneficiaries to look for the exploitation of their research result. There are different ways of exploit research results. This can be setting up the spin-off, licensing, selling, whatever it is. You need the idea, you need the right team, and you need to look always at the market. These are the requirements to have the success in our calls. And if we look at this different type of calls, there is another peculiarity. We have got two kinds of calls. One is open, that means no topic prescription, and the other one is challenge. So each year, we identify challenges because we are nowadays the only one executive agency that has been empowered to have policy and implementation. Policy means that we write our yearly work program, the same way as John said about BEPA, we write our yearly work program, but when we implement it, we do not only monitor, we work with the projects, what we like to say hands-on, content-wise. The first day I arrived in EU, it was October 2020. In my desk, there was the Bridge project that Joanne, then I was able to find a very collaborative colleague as Joanne, and I was lucky enough to understand the mentality. I was not acknowledged about, let me say, the silos that exist in European Commission, but you are lucky enough in the battery world, also thanks to Joanne, there are less silos. And this is a great opportunity because in the previous panel, we listened a lot to the whole value chain. Here, I named some of the keywords I heard this morning and the integration of the value chain. This can happen only if we try to destroy the barriers. If we are able to bring together scientists, entrepreneurs, and managers, then we will face new good results. And I'm optimistic about this. Good results mean that we all know without energy storage, there is no energy transition. So the good or the bad, we have to do it. We simply have to find the right way, and we have to learn by our mistakes. And one of the ways to look at this is to group. You listened by Joanne and maybe also by Evelina these words of portfolio. If you Google it, or if you look inside the project management books, you will see that portfolio from the normative point of view means grouping projects with similar. Okay, what does it with similarities? Similarities mean similar approaches. So inside EIC, with my other colleague, the PMs, we are 2 PMs on green technology. In a few months, we will become 3. And just to tell you that we have to work with the projects, as I said before, content-wise. So we try to group them. Consider that in Pathfinder, and so this part, the low TRL, in the last 3 years, it has been approved approximately 90 projects in the big world of clean tech. Energy and environment. These are the projects inside the energy storage. So what we did, we studied them, we categorized them, and as Joan said, we grouped them up to now, unfortunately, only once a year to discuss them, trying to connect them with the paper projects. That is why we are working. But there is one big problem. We are 2 or 3 guys. We are not 200 or 300. So the only thing that I always repeat, don't be shy. We are here for you. We manage public money, not private money. So I was on your part, on your side, and I was sometimes, I didn't know if I could write someone from European Commission. PMs, you can always call us. And the only way is that if we receive your needs, then we can connect, because I don't know if Joanna or Evelina said we gave a bird view. Yeah, I like to say that we work in a drone view. Maybe it's more innovative than bird, but let me say that we work looking at a lot of connections. We work with VCs, with entrepreneurs, with scientists, and our job is really to connect the dots. Okay, in Italy there is this play that since I'm young, you put the different points and you get out a figure, okay, an image. This is what we do. We try to really collaborate, and here you see what is basic science. It's not hard science. We divided that thematically. We try to link them, and then what we do also, this part is on the partnerships, and this part is on the single project. So to come back to the question from the audience, what can do a startup or an SME? They can apply as a partnership, or they can apply a loan for the accelerator. And what is one of the novelties of the accelerator is that the EIC, as I said before, we do policy and implementation, we do hands-on approach, and we provide 2 kinds of funding. We provide the typical grant, but European Commission has been, let me say, ambitious enough to set up a VC fund, fully funded by public money, that is a EIC fund. So as a SME, you can also apply for the equity of European Commission with 2 characteristics. It's a patient capital for crowding in more investors. What does it mean? That we try to invest, and in these days, there are the accelerator interviews where I'm part of as a jury, and the jury has to understand if the technologies or the companies that is presented its technology is ambitious enough that we can fund it as a deep tech, and there are not private investors enough funding them, because they are not, I mean, private investors obviously tend to be not too risky, while we can be risky. We have to look at all the parts of the riskiness, but we have to be patient investors. That means we do not go normally inside the boards, but we work on the contents without stressing, let me say, too much as normal VCs do. And we are crowding, we are to crowd in more investors, because what is my understanding from my experience in the VC world, they know that we can fail as European Commission in terms of evaluation. As Evelyn and Joan said before, many projects failed. It's part of R&D. But we have got quite high level of evaluation procedure and evaluators. This means that when we fund something, it's not so bad. And for a VC to make a real due diligence, it's really expensive and time-consuming. So once they know that we are backing up with the equity a company, it's not so bad for them. It's much higher level of let me say, of confidentiality of a good investor, okay? So we give something that can also be the seal of excellence, that's part of the process, and so that is why we want to crowd in more investors. And so just to go in another keyword, when we say that we work with the projects, it means that we provide with the program manager the help on the science and business. We try to connect them with the many different possibilities. We saw from Joan and Evelyn that it exists many European funding, but there are also the national ones, the regional ones, and fundraising, it's a job. What I always said to my students, it's that you have to understand when you set up a company, you have to do, if it is a deep tech, you do science, you do scale up, you do certification procedure, but you have to look for money. And fundraising, it's an activity with the same importance in a company as well as the science part. And so to look for money, you need also to receive what we call BAS, that is Business Acceleration Services. So once you are funded by EIC, you will receive the different kind of help from the community, but also you will have money to invest, to get mentors, tutors, to have stakeholders. We organize this kind of things that I'm pretty sure now also the colleagues from EIT will say, we try to link you to stakeholders, to potential investors, to potential partners. We heard this morning, I don't remember from which speaker, that is crucial for scientists at the beginning of their research ideas to look if their materials can be processed properly to be scaled up. And on the other way around, if you are developing processes, if the processes allow you to make a drying procedure less CO2 intensive and things like this. So when designing your research on one side, or when looking at the market opportunities, the best way is to do around the table with different people from different backup know-how that can challenge you. Because the more difficult questions you will be able to answer at the beginning, the highest success rate you will have. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Francesco. And before opening the Q&A session, we'll have a last presentation from our colleague from EIT, EIT Manufacturing. Sorry, InnoEnergy is for later on. So I think he's online. We have Amardeep online, and he will talk about public policy collaboration and how the EIT Manufacturing is supporting the battery community. So please, Amardeep, I think we can hear you, so you can go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you. Good afternoon. So I hope you can hear me well. Yes. Thomas, can you hear me well? Okay, perfect, perfect. So yeah, greetings from Sweden. I could not join you in person today, unfortunately, but I was listening into the presentation in this session, and definitely a lot of very interesting opportunities shared by Francesco and Evelina and Johan. So it's I'm glad to be part of this program. So if you move to the next slide, we could do a start. So indeed, so in Europe, we are facing challenges which are not unique, but at the same time have certain characteristics in terms of competition and resilience in the supply chain, in terms of digital transformation, and especially the topic related to sustainability, and we at EIT Manufacturing realize that these challenges requires a certain approach which cannot be solved alone by one agency or one hub. It requires a collaboration and a community approach, and that's where the next slide comes in. So basically, we are in a nutshell a community of scientists, industrial companies, startups. We are spread across Europe, 7 different locations. I work from Frankfurt in Germany, and basically we have mechanisms and instruments to support innovation, and the innovation is specified by a TRL level 6. So our projects start at TRL level 6, and the goal is to start at a prototype and reach the market at the end of year one or year 2. Now, how do we do that? We have calls twice a year. It's basically a funding opportunity. It's not a complete grant. It is 70% funded by EIT and a 30% co-funding is expected. We realized that the calls and the funds cannot be the only way to ensure acceleration and innovation, as mentioned by Francisco as well in the previous speech. So we definitely have the same understanding about skills and the importance of thinking big. So we have our Skills Move platform, and we have a very interesting innovation platform which is developed over 2 years with 2,000 plus members. So there would be a slide on that. So basically, we are spread across from Sweden to Spain and from Belgium to Greece. And we work in a decentralized manner, and basically there's a certain level of hub collaboration also with regional hubs, digital innovation hubs in the region. So if you go to the next slide, indeed, so this is our partner network. These are members, companies, which are many of them also part of the Battery Alliance. We are working with them very closely to not only work on projects, but at the same time shape the future of manufacturing in Europe. So we have different initiatives like the future of manufacturing, as well as some policy papers related to circular economy. And so I will not go into the details, but at the same time, you see that the partner network is quite balanced in the sense that there's a 50% industry participation and a 50% participation from academia. And at the same time, we are looking at different industries from aerospace, automotive, consumer goods. We are also trying to capture the process and chemical industry market, because we see there are certain challenges which are common to that as well. And the next slide is very interesting because it goes into the question which was asked earlier on. We are also working quite closely with startups in a sense that we do access to market and access to finance support. So I have myself had a startup in Germany and in Switzerland in the past, and I know how tough it is to raise funds in Europe at the same time to. It's not the fundraising part, it's but more the execution part to meet the right industrial companies to have that trust so that you have a contract or a purchase order. So this is something we are quite proud of, and we have a certain pipeline in terms of the startups, and we have technology domains identified. And this is something which does not require a certain membership. So we are open to work with startups. There's a certain assessment criteria we have. And that's the only thing. And basically, we do access to finance, introduction to investors. We also had some collaboration with EIC in the past, like, for example, a fast track acceleration program. So this is something we are working with EIC. And the second thing is introduction to corporate venture capital. So we have corporates who are members, and we also do introductions directly to them. So that's basically about the startups and the company network. If you go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so just brought along a few examples, two concrete ones, but just before we go into that, so we have supported around 200 projects, 100 of them in innovation, and some examples, basically, like, for example, there was something on the COVID response. So there was an air purification unit which was manufactured in Italy and which resulted in a startup, started at a tier level 6. There's also something which was related to digital twin and zero defect manufacturing and circular economy. So that's basically the portfolio. It's quite balanced. At the same time, it involves participation from regional innovation hubs. So a lot of countries from Eastern Europe, Southern Europe as well. And we also have this requirement to have at least 2 co-location centers participating. So imagine a university from Germany is working with a university in Greece and a startup from Italy. So this is there's a certain European character to it as well. So if you go to the next slide, there's an example I brought along, indeed, keeping in mind the theme. So we have this project which is ongoing right now, a very interesting consortium consisting of industrial company from Italy and the Nordics and technology provider also from the Nordics. It's mainly about how could the recycling process of batteries be more, I would say, ergonomically human friendly and at the same time automated. And it's a combination of machine vision and a certain level of human machine collaboration. if you see that quite clearly, we are looking for solutions which have a certain technological maturity, and at the same time, there's a certain market analysis and a certain level of revenue projection done, because we see that there are very nice and very solid scientific solutions which are developed at the lab, but they don't reach the market. And that's why we have this requirement to have a certain level of market analysis and a certain business maturity, along with this technological readiness level of 6 as a starting point. This is a new model, I would say, in terms of the Horizon Europe, but it's at the same time not unique. We are also working closely with EFRA, innovate together. So it's basically a TRL level 4 to 6. So we have some collaboration with them. So EFRA project, which has been already supported at TRL level 4 and has a maturity of 6, has certain, fast track entry to a EIT manufacturing project as well. So that's just to mention, but this is an example, a concrete example of a problem of recycling of batteries, and at the same time, the feedback right now is the industrial company is quite satisfied with the results in a period of 8 months. So this is a 1-year project we are funding. 70% is funded through us and 30% is co-funded. There's another example. If you go to the next slide, please. It's a little bit different to the topic, but definitely relevant, I would say, to circular economy. So there's a special kind of magnets, which is around 80% of that is imported into Europe, and it's used massively in many industries, from batteries to as well as mobile phones. And we have this very interesting consortium working on a certain recycling process of these magnets and making it fit to use. So this is, I would say, a very interesting research project or a scientific project at Fraunhofer, which has translated into a commercial solution being developed with a company from Slovenia and a university in Spain working together. So a very interesting project and a very high social impact as well as a potential economic impact. So this is 2 examples I brought along in terms of to give you a flavor. There are many more, and at the same time, just would like to bring to you the attention of a call which is open. So that's the next slide probably. Yeah. So we have a call, as I said, we have 2 calls per year, and the second one has opened on 9th of September. The deadline for this one is on 10th of November, so we have some time. There are no requirements to be a member to apply for this call. The requirement is coming in the next slide, but it's basically a certain technology readiness level, a certain character in terms of the business and definitely the European consortium. So if you go to the next slide, please. So indeed, we are looking for breakthrough innovation, incremental innovation, starting at year 6. We are looking for pan-European consortium, including the associated countries. So we are also working with Switzerland, UK, and Israel. And there's a certain requirement in terms of end users. So because we see that whenever there's a consortium which has 2 end users, the probability of achieving commercialization is higher. So this is somehow a good thing for the business owner and the startup involved. So if you go to the next slide, please. Indeed, so that was about the call, which is currently open, and I'm happy to talk more about it in the Q&A. We are also looking at disruptive innovation related to decarbonization in manufacturing. So we are working closely with investors as well as corporate venture funds to have a new opportunity for change makers in Europe. So this is basically a different kind of, I would say, an opportunity to look at disruptive innovation, think about what-if scenarios to really improve the sustainability impact in manufacturing and encouraging some crazy solutions as well. So this is still work in progress. It will be released in 23, but just wanted to mention that. And so if you go to the next slide. Indeed, so this is, if you have your mobile phone, so I can share the link in the chat as well. So this is an open invitation to join our platform called Agora. So there's no requirement to be a member. This is a one-stop shop to get all information related to the call. At the same time, a very interesting opportunity to network with 2,000 members, 2,000 participants from the manufacturing community, and it's we believe that as Francisco rightly mentioned, there's a drone view. At the same time, there's a certain constraint we have as individuals to kind of reach out to the right audience. So we always have this do-it-yourself approach, and a certain we would like to use this platform that the right contact is reached, by in the right time. So this is our effort towards that, and it's 2 years in making now, and it's I would say in a good shape. So I would encourage you to have a look at that one. So if you go to the next slide, please. Indeed, so in a nutshell, that's what the organizers also told me, that the key message is there is opportunities in European funding. Indeed, there is a certain level of perception and a certain level of bureaucracy which everyone associates with European funding, but we are working towards making that as lean as possible, as industry friendly, as startup friendly as possible. So it's really in your hands to expand the network, to be active, and we are there to support you, to accelerate the innovation and help you to reach the next level, which is important for all of us as a society. So that's very briefly about EIT manufacturing. I think that's it. That's the end of my presentation, and I'm open to questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Amardeep. Stay online with us, because I will invite Francesco to join me on stage, and I would like to open the floor for some question. We have some time left before the lunch. I know that you are all waiting for this moment, but any question for Francesco or Amardeep?
The moment of question or of lunch?
Question before, lunch after. So if no question from the audience, I have one for you, Francesco. You mentioned that you worked on both sides. You work in corporate, startups, and now on the public funding side. And we know that the European Innovation Council is quite competitive as a funding scheme. What would be your main advice to people here in the room or online who are thinking about a potential application in 2022 or 2023?
Yeah, I would definitely say that if we look the good side, when you write the proposal and when you set up a partnership, you always learn. So that's the good side of the coin. The bad side is that the success rate is in around 3 to 10%. I should say 1 to 7, but let us say 3 to 10. And so it's very low. But once again, as I was discussing before with some colleagues, there is also the opportunity, let me say, to something like reapply. That means you create a partnership, you've been blocked by EIC, you receive good comments, and you can apply, for example, for a BEPA calls or something like this. For example, this year ending, I never remember if 27th of September or October, but if you Google EIC Work Program 2022, you will see there is a call on mid-long-term energy storage. So there is a possibility for all the kind also of flow batteries and things like this. And we all know that mid-long-term energy storage, we need new solutions coming out of Pathfinder, that's the idea, but we also need more advanced solutions. And so that we are also trying to collaborate with other kind of funding, not only EU. For example, there is, I think today or tomorrow afternoon from Sprinde in Germany, another funding on mid-long-term energy storage. So the advice is, as we were saying with Johan, the panorama is very complex about funding, really complex, but it's a job, as I was saying before, of fundraising. So the idea is to be deep tech, the partnership has to be strong, the exploitation has to be, let me say, believable, reasonable, and then there is also the part of the lucky to be, I mean, good enough in writing and in making the evaluators become in love. We never have to forget that evaluators are not, I mean, God. They can make mistakes.
Thanks. And maybe I will extend my question to Amardeep. What would be your advice for companies or startups willing to apply to the EIT manufacturing schemes?
Yeah, sure. I think definitely one of the points which Francisco mentioned too, it's an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to come together as a consortium, meet companies like a startup gets together with Comau or Volkswagen through this call. It's a very interesting opportunity or a pre-sales opportunity to them. In terms of, indeed, it's I would say that in terms of success rate, the call is a little bit different. So we have around 25 to 30% success rate. It really depends how you define it, but there is a certain probability. But the advice is indeed to take this as a pre-sales opportunity from a startup perspective, from a company perspective. I think it's a very interesting instrument to look out of the box. So the companies always have their own startup network, accelerator network as well. But this is a unique opportunity to look beyond your horizons and also quicker results. So you're applying for a call now in September and the project starts in January. So it's, this is, I would say, the three things. Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot. Maybe because I can see the clock is running, but I have one maybe tricky question for Francesco, but we have the battery community. We have a question maybe there before the last questions, please.
Test. Okay. I'm Jared van Swieten from LVS Partners. We're a venture capital investing in new energy. We invest globally, increasingly looking at Europe. My question is on how you cooperate with the venture capital community. In particular, there is always a little bit of, let's say, risk that, you know, who is going to take the first bite at the apple or who is going to take the first risk, right? There's always a little bit of challenge there. So how do you both see this in terms of, let's say, your vision? You know, how do you see the cooperation with VC happening? That's number one. Number two is, in terms of the partnerships and the cooperation, I think this is very important. I agree very much with Francesco that, you know, the key thing is for companies to gain traction and to get first contracts and to show that they can do something instead of, you know, having big ideas. But in that field, it's also very important for European companies to connect in the global supply chain. So how do you see that in the current framework? Thank you.
Yeah, the second one is that as part of the business acceleration services, we provide worldwide connections. So, for example, we open the possibility, we give the possibility to our beneficiaries to attend the trade fairs outside EU. We try to connect. I was with my colleague Pantaleo at the ARPA Summit in US a few months ago. So we are also trying to understand how to connect with the worldwide, once again, value chain. Concerning the VC's connection, there are, I would say, many connections. The first one, the easiest one, is the jury members. A lot of the accelerator, I would say, 80 or 90% of the evaluators of the jury members in accelerator, they come from VC world. The second one is the possibility to interact through the program managers to look at our portfolios. We provide, public data with all the list of the projects we are funding, and some of them, we really, let me say, know the projects and the team, so there is this opportunity to interact. Then there is the third part that is somehow not, I do not remember exact the wording, but there is a way to be, I repeat, this verb is a mistake, but just to understand, to be certified by EIC. That means that you can have a more structured relationship with the EIC fund. The instructions are in the internet site, but I'm not fully aware of this certification, what does it mean and how it works. I know that sometimes they open a window, the colleagues from the EIC fund to look for it. And just one thing that I didn't add, if you are interested to apply to the Pathfinder, consider that the EIC, we provide for the Pathfinder challenge call a challenge guide. That is a document written by us, program manager, where we try to help the applicants to understand why we identify this challenge and what we would like to see written inside the proposal. Okay, thanks, Francesco. I think, unfortunately, time is off, but our speakers will be probably in the room or here during lunchtime. Johan was there also yesterday, so you have plenty of time to talk to them. Just before closing the session, I remind you that this afternoon we will have 2 breakout sessions on post-lithium chemistries, but also on the battery passport, 2 very important topics. And with this, I would like to thank all the speakers, Johan, Evelina, Francesco, and Amardeep, for your interesting presentation. And I hope the audience will be able to access now EU funding. No excuses anymore. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Have a good lunch break.